So, mentioning what you were, taking a point from what you were mentioning a little earlier, that
Hmm.
sometimes it's not all actually for me personally. I feel that if I had the power, I'll just change the definition of bullying, and I'll just put it
Yeah.
that weaker people trying to project that trying to project that they're stronger, and in
Yeah.
order to do that, they're trying to pull you down.
Hmm.
So what I feel is that many a times what a bully does it, and
Yeah.
why you actually become a bully is because
Hmm.
there is definitely some amount of insecurity that you're feeling from the
Absolutely.
other
Yeah.
person. Either
Hmm.
let's say in a college or in a family also. Like, I'll take a different
Hmm.
example in a family. If you have a
Hmm.
cousin, or if you have a sister, sibling, or brother
Hmm.
who's like a achiever, who is like
Hmm.
more, let's say, who's more talented, or who's gaining a lot of
Hmm.
awards, or becoming this popular kid,
Yeah.
and suddenly when you meet you feel jealous of that person. You feel that, yeah, I am not scoring good marks. I am not
Yeah.
the basketball team ka champion. Like,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
am not the school head girl, head boy. So what do
Hmm.
I do to show that I am still more
Better.
superior than you, I'm still better than you? You try to
Yeah.
pull that person down on the most stupidest thing, on the most
Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculous topic. You will try to
Hmm.
ridicule that person. And
Yeah.
what it does is, because you are pulling up a point which might be sensitive. It
Hmm.
might be ridiculous, but at the same time, it might be something that really affects the person. And
Yeah.
that gives, it's sort of also sadistic in nature. So bullying is sadistic, like you get a pleasure out of someone else's misery, pulling that
It
person
is.
down, and you're like, finally mujhe, I've seen this in friend circles
Hmm.
also. If there is
Hmm.
a person who is doing great, who is
Hmm.
उसका business अच्छा चल पड़ा है, या there's a
Hmm.
friend who suddenly gets a placement in Google, everybody
Yeah.
will start with, अरे तुम तो बड़े लोग हो
Hmm.
गए अब, these comments
Hmm.
coming in कि
Yeah.
you are a big person, अब थोड़ी ना
Yeah.
हमारे साथ बैठोगे, and it just
Yeah.
escalates from there. It keeps going up and
Yeah.
up and up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to also think about it, it's so weird that
Yeah.
bullying also has a gender aspect to it. That
Yeah.
I have heard this. I don't know if this can be called bullying or not. I think
Yeah.
people who do it, they don't even know that they're doing it. But I have
Yeah.
heard this statement so many times in the last 2 3 years. और कितना पढ़ोगी? कितना
Hmm.
पढ़ोगी? How much will you study? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially as a woman, you need to
Hmm.
get married. You need to have
Hmm.
kids. You need to
Hmm.
settle down. बेटा और
Hmm.
कितना पढ़ोगे? लाइक आप 4 साल
Hmm.
पहले भी आप पढ़ ही रहे थे, 5 साल पहले, अभी भी
Hmm.
पढ़ ही रहे हो आप. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
kids graduated school and college also, and you're still studying.
Yeah.
And I am like my parents are okay with it. They're like, हाँ पढ़ो पढ़ो,
Hmm.
जितना पढ़ना है तुम
Hmm.
पढ़ो. I'm like, what is
Huh.
your problem? Why are
Yeah.
you concerned about me studying so
Yeah.
much? And
Yeah.
this is not just a question that comes to me. I have
Hmm.
people in my
Hmm.
class also who
Hmm.
also get these questions, that they're hardly graduates, they're hardly out
Yeah.
of school, and
Hmm.
suddenly they're like, अच्छा, you face questions like, और पढ़ना है, और करना है,
Hmm.
अभी मास्टर्स भी करना है, अच्छा अभी ईयर
Hmm.
गैप भी. I'm like, I don't hear men or boys of my age group, my friends, hearing these questions कि
Hmm.
बेटा अभी एमबीए भी करना है. हाँ, so मतलब
Hmm.
if he can do it,
Yeah.
I can do it as well. What this is,
Exactly.
I never ever have I thought about this gender aspect of bullying that
Hmm.
comes
Hmm.
from the society in a very casual way, कि ये
Yeah.
तो बहुत
Yeah.
common है.
Hmm.
This is
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
something that you can report, or this is not
Yeah.
something that you can say that I will take a legal action against you. क्या बोलोगे इसमें?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's obviously the entire societal conditioning about dictating how a woman lives her life, every aspect of it. Also dictating how a woman's life's timeline should look like. A very common thing that women hear is about the clock ticking.
Mm.
So inherently,
Biological
it
clock.
feels, yeah. So women's core goal in life should be to reproduce. It is obviously a privilege that only women can reproduce. I do not discount it at all. I don't think men would be able to go through it. I was reading an article the other day about how a man who said that they wouldn't go through like birth control trials for men because it's too painful for them. And I'm like, bless you all. You don't have to go through like 9 months of pregnancy. I don't know how you would have survived it. But especially with the current generation, obviously it's more prevalent in the West, but it's also coming to India where more and more women are choosing to go child free, right?
Yes.
For various reasons. It could be it could be their careers, it could be how they feel about their body, it could be just the fact that it's also a huge responsibility, and the kind of society we are living in, the kind of earth that we're living in, if you talk about environmentally, the earth's going to the dumps. Societally, we're not at a great place. So nobody wants to bring in a new life into this, right? We've had our
Yeah.
own struggles. It's like, also, I think so many of people in our generation feel like we're constantly parenting our own selves, that we don't need another child to like parent, and especially with, I think, our generation, there's been so much conversation around mental health, around talking about
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that we we have so many things to deal with ourselves that it feels I think a lot of women who I've spoken to feel that till their own issues in terms of the mental health are resolved, it
Mm.
doesn't feel the right thing to do to, kind of be a biological parent or a parent
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think this entire thing of अच्छा ये भी करना है वो भी करना है, and like putting a stop at a certain age, it's like whatever, you 24 तक पढ़ाई करो, 27 में शादी करो, फिर before 30 you should have kids because your biological clock is ticking. So I think it kind of goes from that. Of course, it'll change. I'm hoping with another generation, with our next generation, that a woman's worth isn't only based on whether they reproduce or not. Because
Yeah,
there's also a lot of conversation around the fact that, oh, if you don't have kids, you're not a woman enough. And who decides who is a woman enough, right?
I'll tell you the most ridiculous thing. Just a year ago,
Yeah.
some uncle told me that
Hmm.
so beta, कर लो, शादी कर लो. I was like,
Hmm.
listen, I'm not even 25. What are you saying?
Yeah.
In my head,
Yeah.
obviously. And I
Yeah.
just looked and I
Yeah.
was like, no, no, uncle, abhi kahan? Abhi to I'm not settled. I've not completed my education. I'm not financially in, like, the logical thing.
Hmm.
I'm not financially
Yeah. Yeah.
dependent. I can't
Yeah.
take care of myself. How am I supposed to get married and take care of a
Yeah.
family? No, no.
Yeah.
पढ़ाई वढ़ाई हो जाएगी वो भी हो जाएगा सब
Hmm.
सेटल भी हो जाओगे नौकरी भी हो जाएगी पर पहले शादी कर लो. I was like,
Hmm.
in my head, I just swiftly avoided that conversation. But in my head, I was like, how? How am
Yeah.
I supposed to just get married and then finish my education, get a job? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
any man wants to marry a woman who is going to become a liability on him in today's generation, like today's time, especially. You
Yeah.
cannot,
Yeah.
it's not about just me being a feminist or me being a, this Nari Morcha ka leader that, nahi,
Hmm.
mere ko pehle, matlab, I have to do everything first. And it's not about always protesting or, being a that, like, you get labeled as a woman who's, always protesting. But it's also so logical that why would a man want to marry somebody who is not adding any sort of not adding anything to his life but actually becoming
Hmm.
just a additional responsibility and a liability. If you
Hmm.
cannot support, see, of course there are other things that goes on that where you after marriage there are reasons where people have to stay back home or etc etc. That's a different issue altogether. But
Hmm.
for somebody who has a choice, like
Hmm.
for someone of our age, I don't think
Hmm.
that there's anything wrong in first getting settled financially, then getting
Hmm.
settled in
Hmm.
any other sense of life.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
moment you said na कि अभी 24 तक ये that moment I was like, अरे this uncle last year he caught me बेटा कर
Yeah.
लो I was like what
Yeah.
is this कर लो like I did not study
Yeah.
all of my life and like really spend those nights to ultimately not have a job, not
Hmm.
even fulfill the dream of what I want to do and get
Hmm.
married. उसके बाद कर
Hmm.
लेना वो नहीं
Hmm.
होगा
Hmm.
उसके बाद कुछ नहीं
Hmm.
होने वाला है.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
coming back to social bullying.
Yeah. So,
So, hmm,
so in, I mean, of just like adding to the gendered angle of bullying, there, I think in terms of how people want to have a say always in women's lives, and kind of, so it's not even, I think, about being settled or not. Whether I think the choice should still lie with you when you want to do and what you want to do. It doesn't have to be that you're doing something else, so you're kind of, you don't have the time or bandwidth. Even if I'm not doing anything else, and even if I choose not to be a parent, get married, that is my prerogative. That's my
absolutely.
choice, absolutely. And there's, of course, I've seen people in my circle where parents, there's some parents don't realize it, of going by the general rule that I would say most parents, if not all, most parents have the best intention of their kids at heart, but they don't necessarily always know what they're doing and how they're doing and what kind of effect it has on the child, right? They might have the best intentions at heart, but how they're doing it, whether they're projecting their own fears on their child, it's a different sort of conversation altogether. And even when you shared about bullying between like children who are siblings or who are cousins, a lot of times it's comparison by an adult, which kind of brings that into play.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation around, you're not as smart as your sister, or you're not as
उसकी तरह
outgoing as
बनो,
your brother.
उसकी तरह सीखो.
Huh. So why is that conversation? Because, as individuals, we are our own people. And, I'm sure everyone's like good in something or the other way. And it doesn't have to follow, a certain defined structure that, oh, if the other person is a certain way, the younger sibling or like the older sibling will also be that way.
Yeah.
Um, so there, or like a cousin because your cousin has gone abroad to study, why don't you go abroad to study? So there's this entire comparison and pressure which I think adults bring into children's life without knowing, and that harms the equation between the two people, between the two siblings or the two cousins,
Yeah. Yeah.
which probably wouldn't have got affected if there wasn't that external pressure about outperforming the other, or like being
Yeah.
compared or being good enough to the
I think
other.
this especially happens like I have also studied this as a part of my psychology, course, where there was this
Hmm.
whole section where we studied about the first child and the second child, and
Yeah.
how, even if you are a parent who obviously you love both your children equally, but
Yeah.
because you have, the first child is like that project child कि इसको हम सब
Hmm.
perfect कराएंगे, perfect grades, he knows how to swim,
Hmm.
she knows how to fly, literally she knows how to fly also, उसको सब
Yeah.
कराएंगे हम. And then the
Yeah.
second one is like
Hmm.
बेटा अब इसको कॉपी करना है आपको, ये जैसे जैसे
हाँ.
कर रहे हैं हमने इसको
टेम्पलेट बन
सब
गया है.
टेम्पलेट बना दिया है, इसको सब सिखा दिया है, अब आपको बस इसके पीछे पीछे जाना है अपने भैया के या दीदी के या whatever. Just go behind
Yeah.
it and do exactly how that person is. And it's so
Hmm.
so weird that across the world, universally,
Yeah. Hmm.
it's the same pattern where the elder one is always
Yeah.
told these things that you have to be the responsible one, you have to be the one
Hmm.
who has to be the model, the role model, and the younger one is
Hmm.
always pressurized with the facts, with these facts like उसकी तरह बनो, उसकी तरह करो.
Hmm.
Even that
Hmm.
movie तारे जमीन पर, the whole
Yeah.
idea was that father kept saying कि अपने भैया को देखो, भैया को
Hmm.
वो कितना अच्छा कर रहा है, वो
Hmm.
टेनिस भी खेल रहा है, वो
Hmm.
टॉपर भी है, and look at you. That
Hmm.
kind of behavior is obviously, as a parent, maybe you're not doing it intentionally, but
Yeah.
that is also a kind of social bullying where you're,
Yeah.
putting it in the mind of that child that if I am
Hmm.
not as good as my elder sibling or my,
Hmm.
this cousin, then I am
Hmm.
not good enough for my parents. Like,
Yeah.
my parents will not love me if I don't score as much as my bhaiya or my didi is scoring. And
Yeah.
on the other side of the coin, for
Hmm.
the elder one, it's like if I don't
Hmm.
become a role model for my younger sibling, then
Hmm.
I will not be respected by my family.
Hmm.
I have let down my family. That guilt
Hmm.
trip, वो अलग ही एक trip पे चला जाता है कि,
Hmm.
I have let down my family, my sibling will not
Hmm.
respect me. Because then
Hmm.
everyone starts saying कि देखो छोटी बहन कितना अच्छा कर रही है, तुम उससे बड़े हो, तुम कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे हो.
Hmm.
That's how the comparison suddenly shifts. It's like
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
not a good thing if the younger one is doing better than the elder one.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That
why does it
that
have to be
yeah
that way?
yeah. Why is there a competition?
Yeah. And I think parents often forget that, as especially if they have more than one children, that the children, despite the fact that they have come from them, don't have to be, similar.
Yeah.
Even twins can be very, very
Right.
different. Like I think for me, I have a sibling, and we are very, very different. We are worlds apart. Like we are our own individuals. We are interested in different things. Of course, because I have an elder sibling, there's always, if my elder sibling is doing this, it's a cool thing, so I'll also do it. There was always that role modeling,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
subconscious role modeling that was in play. But as we grew up, we became our own individuals. We enjoy doing different things, and there's no like, I don't want to be who he is, and he doesn't want to be who I am. So
You can't.
now we've come to our own understanding. We're comfortable in being ourselves, right? But
Yeah.
it does play out quite a bit, especially from a parent's perspective. When and also I think children require different sides of parenting based on how they are, or at like different stages of life also.
Mhm.
Like some children do very well with a parent who is 100% involved, who, the kind of helicopter parenting that we talk about, who's like, oh, will show up at
Always there.
every PTA meeting, is always there, is always at every class, waiting outside the swimming class to pick up the kids. Some children do much better with like parents who are more hands off, who give the child their own space to kind of grow.
Yeah.
And I think using something that doesn't go with the child can also account for bullying in a way, right? So if a child, and it can cause a lot of friction between,
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
the two generations. So if a child inherently is a more independent person, right, and has grown up to be a more independent person, and if then there's a helicopter parent who is wanting to, decide everything for the child, it's not going to go well, right? So then what happens usually is, if the child after a certain age becomes more independent, then there's the reverse cycle of bullying their parents. There are
Ah.
obviously cases of children bullying their parents and like dictating how they should live their lives. And then, there are obviously all of these cases about like sort of parents getting put back into
Old age
like
homes and
old age homes
yeah.
and getting removed from the property or whatever. Like, there's this entire
Yeah.
stream of things.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's also perpetuated from a history that people often tend to overlook, right?
Mm.
Because in India, as a society, we've historically we've had joint families. Historically, there's been a lot of importance placed on someone who's older than us. So how we keep hearing about, this person is older, so you should respect that person. It doesn't matter whether the person is right, wrong, is
Yeah.
doing good things or not. Just out of the sheer fact that they're older than you in age, you should respect.
पहले पैदा हो गए तो उनको थोड़ा सा ही रिस्पेक्ट देना
Yeah.
चाहिए.
So I mean, I obviously don't buy that school of thought. I don't think that that's how
Yeah.
it should be. But you know, then there's this entire concept, and there's resentment, with people who are older. Then it kind of leads to the reverse cycle of them kind of trying to overshadow this person and trying to prove that they are better in their own
Better.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true because I feel that coming back to where I started the discussion with that,
Hmm.
it is part of our everyday being where you can
Yeah.
find glimpses of it in, every other aspect of your life, every other part of your life, but it's so
Hmm.
casual. Like we've become
Hmm.
so accustomed to this behavior that
Yeah.
it's not something that you take seriously unless
Hmm.
it reaches an extent where it's the worst situation has arrived. You will not take
Yeah.
it into account. You will not
Hmm.
modify your behavior. You will not be careful. It's like कैंसर जब तक नहीं होगा तब तक हम अनहेल्दी लाइफस्टाइल लीड करते रहेंगे. एकदम से
Yeah.
बीमार हो गई ना, कोविड कम्स इन, everyone wants to
Hmm.
be a fitness freak now, everyone
Yeah.
wants to be super healthy, but
Yeah.
I am also one of these people, by the way. But
Yeah.
to think about it, I was like, उससे पहले क्यों नहीं थे हम ऐसे? Like,
Hmm.
why
Hmm.
did you not modify why did you not improve yourself when there was a very good, sweet time in your life? Now that
Hmm.
you are in this crisis, now you
Hmm.
want to, apologize. Now you want to mold yourself. Now you want to improve
Hmm.
yourself. You want to correct your
Hmm.
behavior. But if we can just
Hmm.
correct it from the beginning, as
Hmm. Hmm.
people who are educated, and
Hmm.
not we're not just literate people, we are educated people,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
anybody who has passed 12th standard, I don't think that person is just a literate person कि उसको सिर्फ लिखना और पढ़ना आता है. You have some
Hmm.
amount of brain also, that you're
Sensibility.
educated to an extent. Yeah, you have some amount of sensibility. So why not apply it from the beginning? Be a more
Yeah.
conscious being, and not just
Yeah.
someone who's like चलता है.
Hmm.
I'm tired of this चलता है word. ये चलता है, चलो चलो, what
Hmm.
कुछ नहीं चलता है.
Hmm.
नहीं
Hmm.
चलता है.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
behavior, it doesn't work. It cannot work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I think obviously there's like you said, there's this entire way of looking at things in life that till it doesn't reach the extreme end, like there's nothing that you'll get out of it. So often in terms of just bullying also, you're physically not being affected. There's no
हाँ.
physical bullying. There's no physical
Bullying.
harm to you.
Hmm.
I bola hi to hai. It's just verbal. So even in terms of abuse, I feel which happens in like both a relationship with a partner, heteronormous or otherwise. That often people tend to overlook the bullying that happens when it's not physical, because
Verbal.
there's no evidence to it. There's no clear black and white to it. It's
Yeah.
more gray area, of course.
Yeah.
When there's just verbal abuse or like verbal bullying, it's more of a gray area, and it also has got to do a lot with how a person has been raised, and what normal is for that person, right? So if a child has grown up seeing, like physical violence in their home throughout their growing up stage, um, that is normal for them, right?
Yeah.
So when physical violence doesn't happen and it's only restricted to, let's say, just verbal bullying, they
Hmm.
think that's absolutely good, like absolutely normal. So they would probably not even realize that something's wrong is happening with them. And then again, like I think with any form of course correction, if you don't realize that something wrong is happening with you, there's no way to course correct, right? Because you don't consider yourself a victim. You don't think you're at the wrong end of things. So then it gets even more difficult to fight that battle about correcting things with the other person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it's verbal, then there are a lot of things that are said that oh, I said it in jest, in the heat of the moment, bol
Hmm.
diya. I didn't mean it. But of course, it comes from a certain space, right? If you've verbalized something, there's a thought process that has gone behind it. You've thought about it, which is why it has come out of you. Um, I'm not saying that there are not times when people say something and they don't essentially mean it. But somewhere that thought has come to you, in some form of or the other, which is why it's being said out to the other person. So it doesn't have to be an extreme form of bullying when you're physically harming someone or like there's physical torture involved. Something as simple as like saying something to put the other person down or commenting on that person's religion, caste, family status, anything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It also happens when uh, which I have realized in a lot of cases in schools in Delhi. So once the RTE was passed, the Right to Education Act,
mm,
private schools have to have a certain percentage reserved for the economically weaker sections of the society.
right,
Now, with these children, what happens is obviously they are a misfit, in a private school
yeah,
because they might have gotten the admission, but they don't look a certain kind, so that they don't fit. They don't have the same obviously
facilities,
the essential resources are the same, so
resources.
they'll have the same books or like they'll have the same notebooks, but they won't have the same, let's say, a water bottle or a tiffin box. And something as simple as that in a school class situation can really play out. So then there's bullying and comments about, oh, your father, like your mother is just a driver, and, my
Yeah,
parent owns this big business. So um, essentially children shouldn't think, or they usually don't think about things like that, but it often comes from hearing about it from somewhere or like seeing it somewhere. It could be in their family, it could be in their society, it could be in their neighborhood that they are hearing, अरे आप तो बस हमारे घर में काम करते हो. So then the child, because children, they model what they see. So they pick it up from there. And then the entire conversation starts around, oh, your dad is just this, or your mother is just this. So you don't have an equal standing as I do.
it can also reflect in the kind of behavior your peers, like, you might not necessarily say it out loud, but then,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you're going for an outing and you don't invite
Yeah.
them, or you're
Mm-hmm.
going for a trip and you don't
Yeah.
include a person who is, maybe financially not as secure as you are. Let's say if you
Mm-hmm.
are in a group, schools,
Mm-hmm.
colleges, you make groups, you not
Yeah.
based on, your class and your caste, or you just make friends, you
Mm-hmm.
make friends. And
Yeah.
then if you like, you're planning an outing, you're planning a trip, you're planning a tour, and then, you
Mm-hmm.
don't invite or consider the background or the financial situation or other
Mm-hmm.
things of that one particular member or the two particular member of the group, and you're like, कोई
Yeah.
बात नहीं, ये afford नहीं कर सकते, कोई बात नहीं, हम जाएंगे. you know that
Mm-hmm.
that shows
So you don't
your
modify the
mindset.
plan, but you go ahead with the plan and you don't take into
Yeah,
consideration
you
the
cannot afford
minority.
a 20,000 trip or a 80,000 trip or a one whatever thousand trip. कोई बात नहीं, आप तुम मत चलना, but we will go.
Hmm.
We will not
Yeah.
change our plans because you
Hmm.
can't afford it. That
Hmm.
that shows what kind of a friend you are, and
Yeah.
second, um, that shows how much you respect where the other person comes from, or
Yeah.
because what you are saying, that the basic facilities कि
Hmm.
टिफिन बॉक्स सेम नहीं है, बॉटल सेम नहीं है, मे बी वो जूम पे क्लासेस हो रही है, तो दैट पर्सन इज joining in from her his MacBook or laptop or
Hmm.
Lenovo
Hmm.
tab or whatever, and this person is joining in from that one phone which the entire
Hmm.
family is using. That
Using.
can
Yeah.
also become a point of you feeling lesser.
Exclusion.
Yeah, you feeling secluded. So yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely makes sense. So I think we've
And also, I
really,
think like
yeah. No, no, please go ahead.
exclusion, like what we were talking about earlier, exclusion also works in the other way. When, especially in adulthood, like when a person like becomes like the top achiever, the entire conversation, how you said about, अरे अभी तो आपसे appointment लेना पड़ेगा मिलने. So there's that exclusion when the person's made to feel that they're beyond everybody, so they're not included in plans.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like social ostracization in a way, where the person's not included in anything. The group starts feeling or thinking of themselves as inferior to this other person, when in reality, it's probably not even true, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
this person's like becomes bigger than the group, and then kind of there's this entire non-including of them in like conversations, events, and things like that. So if you achieve too much, that's a problem. If you underachieve, that's a problem. So what's the perfect balance where you can like really fit in?
Yeah. That's a very you know, open-ended question. I think. I
Yeah,
mean, there's no answer to it because
yeah,
it's so subjective and so you know, like it's based on everyone's individual perspective and experiences. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing
thank
your
you.
views. And it's been a lovely discussion. I just looked at my mobile time and I was like, oh wow, we've been really talking for quite a while. And I was like, okay.
It's
I
like
didn't really uh,
that's always
understand.
a good sign.
Yeah, yeah, that really shows that it was a lovely discussion, and I'm pretty sure that we've been able to bring out some areas of discussion which will contribute meaningfully towards
Hmm.
someone at least understanding what this whole issue is, and
Yeah.
why is it important to think about it, at least. Like,
Hmm.
you don't have to necessarily do anything about it, but at least
Hmm.
think about it, that why is this important? Why do you get to
Hmm.
why is it that affidavit signature is so important?
Yeah, yeah. And to actually read through the
Yes.
entire document.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Nabiha. It was lovely talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
Shruti.
See you.
Yes,
Great. Have a great
likewise.
time.
See you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.